Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. These past few months, COVID-19 has dominated much of our conversation and discussion. These are very difficult times for everyone. At least 320 people have died from COVID-19 in Palm Beach County. That's 320 mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, aunts, and uncles. Sometimes the numbers are getting so large that we become numb to them. I never want us to lose sight that there is an individual, a person, a family member, a friend behind each and every one of those numbers. So that's 320 deaths. We know a number of people have lost jobs and are in economic dire straits as a result of this COVID-19, and our hearts and prayers go out to each and every one of them. COVID-19's impacts can be felt throughout our city, and I want our residents to know that the city is here for you during these difficult times and always. And it's important that we continue to take precautions to keep you and your family safe. For as long as COVID-19 remains a threat to our city, I will do everything I can in my power to help keep our residents safe. We are committed at the city to working to ensure the best possible outcome and recovery, including economic recovery for our city. There will indeed be life after COVID-19 in our city, and I know we all look forward to that day. However, as we continue to take precautions from COVID-19, unfortunately, there's another looming threat of which we all must be mindful. That is the threat of tropical storms and hurricanes. The Atlantic hurricane season runs from June 1st, 2020 to November 30th, 2020. This is a period when tropical storms and hurricanes are expected to develop in the Atlantic. This morning, I want to speak directly to West Palm Beach residents to urge them to begin preparations now for the hurricane season. I especially want to urge our seasonal residents who have perhaps extended their stay in our city due to COVID-19 impacts to please take the hurricane season seriously. The actions you take now can save lives. Hurricane forecasters at Colorado State University have predicted that hurricane season will have above normal activity this year. They say there is an above average probability for major hurricanes making landfall along the continental United States. This week, NOAA's Climate Prediction Center predicted the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season will be more active than usual. Their outlook calls for 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 6 major hurricanes, of which one is predicted to be Category 3 or higher. This forecast is more active than the 30-year average. Now, we have seen the death, damage, and destruction that these powerful storms can cause. We need look no further than the Bahamas last summer, when Hurricane Dorian struck as Category 5, causing more than $3 billion in damages and killing more than 70 people, and another 280 people were missing after the storm. And if you recall, Dorian had West Palm Beach directly in its sights, as our city was terrifyingly in the cone for a long time. You might also remember that in 2018, a state of emergency was declared for West Palm Beach during Hurricane Irma. These are only the most recent storms in a very long list of hurricanes that have impacted our city over the years. Let's not forget the notorious storm of 28, which made landfall near West Palm Beach, with winds up to 160 miles an hour, killing an estimated 4,000 people. Today, there's a mass grave in our city which serves as a tribute to the victims and as a reminder of the sheer power and destruction of hurricanes. Now, while forecasting has gotten better with time, at the end of the day, there's still much about hurricanes that remains uncertain. Where will the storm go? When will it strike? How bad will the devastation be? But what is certain is that today, we can take steps to protect ourselves and our loved ones. We could take precautions now that can minimize potential damage and help save lives. Joining me this morning are Emergency Manager, Assistant Fire Chief Brent Bloomfield, and and Assistant Police Chief Sarah Mooney. Both have been working around the clock these past few months to keep us safe from COVID-19. I want to express my heartfelt thanks to each of them. This morning, however, they will share with you important steps that you could take now to protect yourself and your loved ones during hurricane season. And they will also talk about how some of our planning must change due to COVID-19. Chief Bloomfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Assistant Chief Brent Bloomfield, City Emergency Manager. I'm here today to talk to you about hurricane season and how things are going to change a little bit this year and some of the improvements that we've made here in the EOC. One of the first things I want to talk to you about is making sure that you gather your supplies and get your kits ready now. We want to make sure that you're ready for 72 hours post-storm. One of the biggest issues that we have after a storm clears is getting out and getting to people that are in need. You have to be able to be self-sufficient for up to 72 hours. So that means that you need to make sure that you have non-perishable foods, you need to have water, you need to have supplies, medication, dog food for your pets or cat food for your pets, those type of things, as well as this year is going to be a little different. Make sure that you have in your kit hand sanitizer, wipes, disinfecting wipes, and other general household cleaning supplies. These are going to help if you have to evacuate or to keep yourself clean during and after the hurricane passes. That brings me into beginning tomorrow on Friday, there's going to be a tax-free shopping weekend. This is for hurricane supplies. You could find more information on our website. One of the biggest issues is also knowing your zone. We have a link on our website at WPB.org/hurricanes that you can go to look for the zones that you may be living in. Also, stay informed. Make sure that you use a trusted source such as the media outlets, the local media outlets, or the city website. You can also contact us on our hotline at 561-822-2222 for any of the information. One of the things I want to talk to you about is what we are doing here in the EOC to help protect our residents and businesses in the city. We have added new damage assessment tools for post-hurricane response and recovery. As you can see here, if you look around, you can see some of the improvements that we've made here. One of them being a post-storm damage assessment tool where when we go out after the storm, it live feeds back in here into the EOC so that we can get resources to places that have the most damage in the city and we can get help to our citizens much faster. We have already started planning this and we have already started using this tool during COVID when we went out, our task force went out to the nursing homes in the city and we were asked certain questions that, whether they had generators, whether the generators are working. So we were already preparing for hurricane season even several months ago when we started responding and recovering from COVID. We are doing things a little different in the EOC. We have improved our planning sessions. We have added some much needed help in the EOC as far as logistics and adding Chief Mooney to the team. So we are doing things to improve every day and to help improve the response and recovery to our citizens and to help to make sure that our citizens are safe before, during, and after the storm. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, media, for coming.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Bloomfield, and let me introduce now Assistant Police Chief Sarah Mooney. Sarah?
Thank you, and good morning. Appreciate you all being here to listen to us speak a little bit about the upcoming hurricane season. I think that the most important thing that we want to get out to everybody in the city of West Palm Beach is the fact that now is the time to be planning and preparing for what could come this season. As Assistant Chief Bloomfield and the Mayor have already spoken about, there are some things that we might have to deal with this year that we didn't have to in the past. And that needs to go into the planning that each and every one that lives in the city of West Palm Beach does in preparation for a hurricane. First thing I want to tell you that is the most important is to make an emergency plan. We have a lot of citizens that have been through hurricanes in the past. They have a plan in place, but they need to add a couple extra things to that plan at this point. Assistant Chief Bloomfield had mentioned about having supplies and ready to go, 72 hours worth of supplies for a hurricane. We never considered putting face masks and hand sanitizer and soap in our kits before. That's something that's going to be imperative, especially if somebody doesn't stay in their home and shelter in place. You want to make sure that you have all the equipment to stay safe and healthy through a storm. One of the other things that Assistant Chief Bloomfield mentioned was knowing your zone. By saying knowing your zone, it has to do with evacuations. We have several locations in the city that are in A evacuation zones, which is almost going to be mandatory if we have any kind of hurricane that's on the horizon. If you're in a mandatory evacuation zone, you need to have a plan to get out of your residence. You need to go somewhere else other than your location that you're in that evacuation zone, because the chances of something happening at your location if you stay could be catastrophic. So you need to make sure that you have a plan. If you don't have a mandatory, if you're not in a mandatory evacuation zone, you may consider evacuating anyway. There's a lot of people that are going to be in town this year throughout the summer that don't typically spend their summers in Florida. Hurricanes can be very scary. They too need to come up with a plan and determine whether or not they are ready to shelter in place or if they want to get out of town. If people make a decision to get out of town, the key to that is going to be prepare yourselves early. Flight restrictions and delays with mass transportation right now, and in the future we don't know what that's going to look like. Hurricane season goes through the end of November. If COVID interferes with hurricane season the entire time, these are things that we have to take into consideration. So the roadways are going to be jammed, the airports may or may not be accessible. People have to have a game plan ahead of time. And once you make the decision to leave, stick to your decision. Don't hesitate. Put your plan into place. If you decide that you're going to stay local and you're in an evacuation zone or you're not, the best course of action would be to move a little bit further inland. If you have family or friends that are in a location that you know are not in an evacuation zone and you have the opportunity to stay with them, make that plan up front. Don't wait till the last minute, because you don't know if they're even going to stay in town. If you decide that you are going to go to a shelter, there's a couple things you have to take into consideration. The county's working very hard to make sure that all of the shelters locally follow CDC guidelines in regard to COVID. So there's going to be different spatial recommendations or mandates. There's going to be health screenings as you come into a shelter. You're going to have those supplies, like I said before, the personal PPE gear that you may need to bring into a shelter if you plan to stay there. There's going to be, as of right now, we don't know of any new shelters that are going to open, but they're going to expand the locations, the internal sections of the locations that they already have listed on the county website. You should be seeing some more information coming out in the next couple days in the specifics of the changes that they've made. If you're going to use a special needs shelter, if you require special needs or pet shelters, you have to register ahead of time. So that's something that you should be looking into doing right now. You can do that online with the county. Again, the last and most important thing is that you have to stay prepared and stay informed. Local weather, local news, the city communications department will put out information as a storm approaches. The best thing you can do is make your plan, execute that plan, stick with your plan. One of the things I didn't mention that I meant to is communicating with your family and friends. If you put a plan into place, make sure somebody else knows your plan other than just the people that you're with. You want to make sure that you can communicate with others and they can check on you after a storm. With that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Chief Mooney. Now, in closing, I want to share with you that we have created a dedicated hurricane page on our website. There's a markup there so that our residents can easily access much of the information about which we just spoke. Just visit WPB.org/hurricane. I'll repeat that, WPB.org/hurricane for information about your evacuation zone, supplies, special needs shelters, insurance, flooding information, and much more. Once again, that's WPB.org/hurricane. Of course, if you have any questions, you can call us at City Hall at 561-822-1200. That's 561-822-1200. Stay informed, be prepared. Okay, we'll take any questions you may have.
Mayor, what's your understanding of how shelters may operate, considering the social distancing guidelines that may be in place?
I know the Chief spoke about that, but Chief Bloomfield, do you want to go into more detail?
So FEMA actually put out guidelines for shelters. The county is going to be following the CDC and FEMA guidelines for that. There are some other restrictions as far as they made, bigger per square foot per person. They're expanding some of the shelters. They are looking at other, for special needs and pets, they're looking at other options. So they have a plan in place. The county runs the shelters, so they have a plan in place. We help them with the shelters in the city, but they are following FEMA and CDC guidelines for that.
So it'll be a different setup than what existed in the past?
They're still working on the plan, and I believe that they're going to be putting their plan out here shortly. But there is, if you go on FEMA's website, FEMA actually has on their website the guidelines for shelters.
Do you have, while you're on the podium, do you have any special concerns about protecting your personnel during a time of emergency, considering COVID?
Yeah, we have plans in place. We've actually started looking at, for us in PD, we actually went through and changed some policies based on COVID during this and about responding. We're going to be using the same PPE we've been using for COVID. We're going to have to use that more during a storm. We typically, when a storm clears, we typically have a lot of calls that are backed up and backlogged that we have to respond to. So there's an opportunity that we're going to probably use more PPE than we're using right now. So what we're doing is right now our logistics team is ordering more and more PPE so that we are prepared not only for the rest of COVID, but also for hurricane season and COVID with hurricane season. We've already had 2 named storms, and we're not even to June 1st yet. So we're taking this seriously. In the past couple years, we've been very lucky with some of the storms. We've been faced with some adversity, and we overcame that. And I think that we are going to continue to prepare and do what's best for our citizens.
Can you go back to shelters? Are you not going to open any additional shelters?
We don't control the shelters. The county controls the shelters. We have one shelter in the city at Forest Hill High School. We help them with personnel for that. So we don't make the decision on what shelters open and where they are, and we don't also make the decision on the amount of people that can go to those shelters. That's all through the county. But we are on a call with the county 3 to 5 times a week, depending on the week, and they are making plans right now, and they're following the FEMA guidelines.
Any thoughts about separating high-risk seniors in the shelters versus everyone else?
Yeah, once again, the county is following the CDC guidelines and the FEMA guidelines, and they are coming up with a plan right now, and when it's out, I'm sure they'll share it with everybody.
Chief Mooney, if I could ask you a question. Has the department learned anything through this COVID experience that they're going to apply heading into the possible emergency of a hurricane?
Yes, I think everybody's learned something. The question was, has the department learned anything regarding COVID and how that's going to impact our response at hurricanes? The same as the shelters for the general public. We have to kind of look at our plans for how we house people during a storm to make sure that we abide by the social distancing guidelines also, to make sure that our staffing is going to be available to go out, before and after a storm. I think that citywide, we're re-looking at it. It's not just one department that needs to do it. Assistant Chief Bloomfield spoke about the PPE gear that's required. In the past, we may not have been as apt to put a mask on just going and doing our general rounds after a storm. Right now, that's become commonplace, and if you're not taking those precautions, then you're going to put people at risk. So I think just generally, we're adapting the same way that we would expect the general population to, and just being a little bit more cautious to make sure that when we're exposed or have the potential to be exposed to something, that we're taking the precautions to avoid contracting any illnesses that we could avoid.
Anything else? Okay, well, again, thank you, everyone. Stay safe.